In November 1978, a remote settlement in the Guyanese jungle became the site of one of the most harrowing tragedies in American history. Over 900 members of the People's Temple, led by the charismatic yet manipulative Jim Jones, perished in a mass murder-suicide that shocked the world. This is the story of how a movement that began with promises of equality and social justice spiraled into paranoia, control, and ultimately, death. Before Jonestown became a massacre, it was a movement, one that began with idealism, inclusion, and the charisma of a man named Jim Jones. Jones founded the People's Temple in Indianapolis in the 1950s. At a time when churches were still segregated, he preached racial unity and social justice. He adopted non-white children, opened food banks, and promoted equality from the pulpit. To outsiders, he looked like a revolutionary. To followers, he felt like salvation. But Jones was more than a preacher. He was a manipulator. Behind the sermons were staged faith healings, coerced confessions, and emotional blackmail disguised as devotion. By the mid-1960s, he moved the temple to California, claiming to flee a coming nuclear apocalypse. In San Francisco and Los Angeles, the movement exploded. Jones gained political clout, endorsed progressive leaders, and delivered votes in bulk. Politicians praised him. Journalists held back. But the temple wasn't just a church. It was a machine built on fear. Members signed over their assets. Families were separated. Some were forced to falsely confess to crimes so Jones could keep them in line. Critics were intimidated. Defectors were labeled enemies. Jones preached that America was corrupt and that enemies were closing in. His solution? Leave, disappear, start over. And so, in the mid-1970s, Jim Jones led his most loyal followers, hundreds of men, women, and children, into the South American jungle. There, he promised paradise, but what they got was a prison. In the mid-1970s, seeking to escape media scrutiny and potential legal consequences, Jones orchestrated the relocation of his followers to Guyana, South America. There, they established Jonestown, envisioned as a socialist paradise free from oppression. Initially, life in Jonestown seemed idyllic. The community worked together to build their new home, cultivating crops and living communally. However, the reality was far from the utopian dream. Residents faced grueling labor, inadequate nutrition, and constant surveillance. Jones's paranoia grew, leading to the implementation of white nights, rehearsals for mass suicide in the event of external threats. Concerned by reports of abuse and human rights violations, U.S. Congressman Leo Ryan traveled to Jonestown in November 1978, accompanied by journalists and concerned relatives. Initially welcomed, the delegation soon encountered residents desperate to leave. As Ryan's group prepared to depart, they were ambushed at a nearby airstrip by temple members. Ryan and 4 others were killed, marking the first assassination of a sitting U.S. congressman. November 18, 1978. The day began with uncertainty and ended in unthinkable horror. After the Port Kaituma airstrip ambush, where Congressman Leo Ryan and 4 others were murdered by temple gunmen, Jim Jones knew there was no turning back. The walls were closing in. Back in Jonestown, he summoned over 900 people to the Central Pavilion. Under a darkening sky and the echo of panic in the air, Jones took the microphone for the last time. His voice was calm, disturbingly calm, as he urged his followers to commit what he called revolutionary suicide. He told them the U.S. military would soon invade, that their children would be tortured, that death was the only escape. Armed guards flanked the pavilion. No one could leave. Mothers were forced to administer cyanide-laced flavor aid to their children first. Some children were held down. Others took the poison while watching their families cry. Then came the adults, many of whom drank under duress, knowing there was no way out. Others were injected when they refused. There were screams, panic, collapse. The poison, a mix of cyanide, Valium, chloral hydrate, and Phenergan, caused convulsions, foaming, and paralysis. Death came quickly for some, agonizingly slowly for others. At the end, 918 people were dead, 304 of them children. Jones was found slumped in a chair, dead from a single gunshot wound to the head. Whether it was suicide or delivered by someone else remains uncertain. What's clear is this: it was not mass suicide. It was mass murder, committed in a climate of fear, manipulation, and psychological captivity. To this day, Jonestown remains the largest intentional loss of American civilian life in a non-natural disaster. Until September 11, 2001. Jim Jones didn't control people with weapons. He controlled them with isolation, ideology, and fear. His system was calculated, rooted in classic cult dynamics. Isolation. Once in Jonestown, followers had no money, no phones, no transportation, and no contact with the outside world. Letters were censored. Radio messages were scripted. Sleep deprivation and overwork. Followers toiled in the fields for 10 to 12 hours a day. Nighttime was filled with lectures, propaganda, or punishment. There was no time or energy to question authority. Information control. Jones controlled the narrative. He played recorded news broadcasts painting the U.S. as a collapsing, racist, fascist regime. He convinced members they had nowhere else to go, and no one waiting for them if they left. He performed white night rehearsals, staging fake emergencies where followers were told to drink poison as an act of loyalty. Over time, the rehearsals blurred with reality. When the final day came, the line between real and imagined threats had disappeared. He taught that death was dignity and that questioning him was treason. This psychological warfare left even intelligent, capable people too afraid or too confused to resist. The communal lifestyle also made dissent risky. Everyone knew everyone. Families lived together. To speak out meant risking not just your own safety, but your child's, your friends', your future. Jones didn't just build a following. He built a closed system where he was the only source of truth and where obedience was not optional. Understanding how this worked isn't just important for history. It's a warning, because the tools he used, fear, isolation, manipulation, still exist. And the next Jonestown won't start with poison. It'll start with trust. The Jonestown Massacre prompted widespread examination of cults and the mechanisms of control. It led to increased awareness and monitoring of such groups, aiming to prevent future tragedies. Survivors and families of victims have worked tirelessly to honor the memories of those lost, ensuring that the lessons of Jonestown are not forgotten. The story of Jonestown serves as a stark reminder of the dangers posed by unchecked authority and the human capacity for both devotion and destruction. By understanding the factors that led to this tragedy, we can remain vigilant against the forces that seek to exploit and manipulate. Subscribe to Unlocked Confidential for more in-depth explorations of history's darkest chapters.